Hello everybody, it's your Peacekeeper coming at you with the Royal Navy Cruiser Captain Skills video. There's really not a whole lot of builds for this, so it'll be pretty straightforward to go ahead and explain, but let's get to cracking to them. Like I said, there's not really that many builds that can be taken advantage of here, and that's because the lack of high explosive really limits the number of skills that can apply to the Royal Navy Cruisers. Some of these skills I wouldn't take on any ship, but, some of those skills, I guess we should clarify, I wouldn't take on any ship, so it's really not that big of a deal, but there are some differences. Now, most people, I think, are going to fall within two distinct lines. One's going to be more support-focused, the other's going to be more ship survivability-focused. And there's nothing really wrong with either, they're just a little bit different variations on the playstyle. I could also see several hybrid builds of these, so these are by no means the only skills that you should take. These are just the skills that I think are more applicable to this line than any other line is, or any other skills are. So let's dive right into it. At the Tier 1 skills, there's only two that are really applicable. Basic firing training and basics of survivability. I'm choosing basic firing training not because it increases the rate of fire of your main guns. They're larger than 139 millimeters, so it's not there's no advantage to taking this on the Royal Navy cruiser line. You're not going to do more damage with your main guns. However, it's that 10% to the average DPS of all of your anti-aircraft guns that really helps these ships out in the long term. At the high tiers, they get a lot of anti-aircraft, but they lack defensive fire, which means that your anti-aircraft suite is not nearly as effective as if you would have defensive fire. So by increasing our anti-aircraft, I see that as being a very important skill to have at the high tiers. That just helps out all around to, make up for the fact that we don't have defensive fire. Basics of survivability is another good option. It's certainly not a bad choice. That, reduction in the time it takes to repair things, extinguish fires, and reduce floods. Those are all very useful. So if you're one of those people that, likes to be in the thick of the action, that might be a better skill for you. However, I'm going to strongly caution against getting way too aggressive with these ships. There is a level of aggression that needs to be had, but it needs to be tempered with the correct moments in which we do that. Going down into the Tier 2 skills, they're pretty much all apply. However, the two most common ones that I think we're going to see is Expert Marksman and Last Stand. I'm choosing Expert Marksman because of that increase in your traverse speed, quickening how your turrets turn. That's really important, especially at the low tiers when your guns don't turn super quick. However, it is important as we get on and on and on, and then it becomes unimportant with Minotaur. But having Expert Marksman there will help offset some of the module choices that we take when we get to Tier 9 and Tier 10 and help keep our turret traverse reasonable. Now, they all have pretty good turret traverse, so that's why you'll see Last Stand get chosen. And like I said, for me, Expert Marksman is more useful. I grew up playing the battleships in this game, so for me, playing battleships in closed beta, I tend to keep my repair parties quite a long time before I actually use them. So I don't find myself in too many situations in which I'll lose an engine or a rudder spontaneously and not have the repair party up. But for those of you who would like to treat these things more like glorified destroyers, the Last Stand is certainly a good option. That's going to allow you to crawl away from fights when your engine gets damaged or your rudder gets knocked out. And it's not a bad skill to take. For me, like I said, I'm pretty religious about keeping my damage control party as long as possible and not burning it right away. So for me, it's not nearly as important, but that is certainly another viable choice. At Tier 3, there's really no other choice. Superintendent is absolutely, positively a requirement for these ships. You have enough consumables at your disposal that having extras is never a bad thing. You can and most likely will use almost all of your consumables every single match. So it's good to have Superintendent to give you that extra one. Obviously, running premium consumables isn't a bad idea either. That also gets you an extra one. You will have to actually work then to actually make money, but especially as the tiers go up. At the 4th level tiers, there's 2 of them that I would consider applicable. There's a 3rd that could play, however, I'm not terribly thrilled about it. So advanced firing training to me is far more important than manual fire AA, at least on the initial outset. So when you're first going up, your first tier 4 skill. And the reason for that is it's going to increase your anti-aircraft bubble. You're going to get a little bit more range out of your anti-aircraft guns. And again, as I talked with basic firing training, you really need that to offset the fact that you don't have defensive fire. And so that just gives you a little bit more breathing room when carriers start to become, a bit of a hassle. There are some that would argue that maybe manual fire control is a better idea. My only observation with this is I would take a long and hard look at which ships this actually applies to. And it will become important, for the Tier 9 and Tier 10 if you want to do a lot of anti-aircraft damage, because the main guns then start to count as anti-aircraft mounts, and they have a lot of DPS. So that certainly is an option for the high tier stuff. Yeah, at the low tier you don't have a whole lot of those higher caliber anti-aircraft guns to really work with. So in terms of tier 4 skills, I would put it as a secondary priority. Now the kind of dark horse in this whole situation is Survivability Expert. And at the lower tiers, this obviously doesn't matter that much, being as it only adds 400 hit points for each ship tier. At tier 5, it's only 2,000 hit points. We're not talking about a huge amount of hit points at the lower tiers. And the downside to taking Survivability Expert, in my opinion, is, you don't have enough armor, and quite frankly, it just disappears too quick. Even with 4,000 extra hit points with the Minotaur at tier 10, you're going to lose that relatively quickly if you're actually taking fire. So whether or not that skill is really applicable to the tier, as a tier 4 skill, it doesn't really wow me the same way that advanced firing training and manual fire control for AA go. In terms of tier 5, there's really only one that I would actually consider, and that's Concealment Expert. Concealment Expert and just outright concealment altogether is a very, very powerful tool to get yourself into place, to make the ambushes that you need to make in order to, do damage. Having Concealment Expert on board, on your captain, is going to make a tremendous difference in the way that these ships play. It's going to allow you to get closer to the ships that you need to get closer to absolutely wreck their face, while also allowing you to escape from ships that you don't necessarily want to get into a fight with. And that would be, battleships that are bow on to you, that aren't presenting a profile, that might be... Oh, wow, I got a flag. That might be, as a result of your attack on another ship. So, Concealment Expert, in my opinion, is a no-brainer. There's going to be a number of people that are going to argue for preventative maintenance or for jack of all trades. Both of those have interesting play styles, but in terms of overall play style, I just don't see that there's any other way to really do this. And Last Chance, it's just not a big enough difference. And if you're at that low of hit points, it's really not going to make that big of a difference unless you're just constantly firing from stealth, in which case, Concealment Expert is still the better option. So that gets you 15. And for me, like I said, basic firing training, expert marksman, superintendent, advanced fire training, Concealment Expert. That is what I consider to be the more support-oriented build. The more ship-oriented build is going to be basics of survivability, last stand, superintendent, advanced firing training, concealment expert. There obviously could be hybrids of both. But those are the skills that really apply. Once we get beyond there, there's really only two different ways you could go. If you're looking for a little bit of extra survivability, you could take basics of survivability and high alert. High alert will get you that 10% reduction in your damage control party, which is the instant repair for fires, floods, and damaged modules, or obviously that manual fire control for AA, which becomes really powerful at the high tiers. So those are really kind of the builds that I foresee a lot of people going into with these ships. As I said, my personal build is going to revolve around the anti-aircraft suite on these and trying to make up for the lack of defensive fire skills. I can also make a pretty solid case for the ship survivability and the more aggressive captain skill loadout. That's not really a bad idea at all either. I mean, either one of those are pretty solid. You'll not go wrong. And for those of you looking for more hybrid options, you're certainly welcome to play with those as well. The nice part about it is because we don't have the ability to switch to HE, there's a lot of skills that some people go, I wonder if that would be a good skill to have. Those are off the table from the get-go. That's the Demolition Expert and the Expert Loader. Those two skills really aren't applicable. Obviously, none of the aircraft ones are really all that applicable either, the carrier ones. So, anyway, that's the captain skills. This is a short, sweet video. And I hope you guys are going to enjoy these videos. They're going to require a lot of work on my part, and I'm hoping that I can make the videos show just how strong these ships can be when played to their strengths. I know the Emerald video is pretty good because I've been recording every battle I've played in her. But anyway, I'm your Peacekeeper. As with always, guys, like, comment, and subscribe. And thank you guys so much for watching.